While most people on WallStreetBets are hoping for the day their portfolios finally turn green, LongWashere is someone who was able to quit his job to trade options and play pickleball all day long. Things weren't always this lavish for the Dragon of Wall Street, though. LongWashere was originally a software engineer working in the financial tech industry. He's been trading options for 7 years, but didn't really start making noise on WallStreetBets until 2023. On June 17th of 2023, he was able to roll over his Palantir gains into TQQQ. He then rolled these gains into Adobe and walked away with an $80,000 profit when it was all said and done. About 2 weeks after this, he dropped $53K on a stock that he would become very fond of over the next few months. The company in question was Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, aka TSM. Not only did he get calls on TSM, but he also coughed up an additional $53K on Microsoft debit spreads. All of his calls expired in a few weeks, but he was already down almost $20K. LongWashere said, "Made some money on Palantir, now I'm ballin'. AI pump round 2, please God." Every company I know has been onboarding to Azure OpenAI in the last quarter to release to production. TSMC will raise guidance in anticipation of AI chips productions for Nvidia. Inflation going to come in low for CPI next week on the mere fact that last July, CPI was by comparison. As long as China stops playing chicken with their boats with other countries, then we Gucci. His TSM calls would not be in the money by expiration, and his Microsoft spreads were just about break even. The Dragon of Wall Street didn't give us updates on this trade, so we don't know how big of a loss he took, or if he maybe even sold before his calls took a hit. Flash forward a few months, and LongWashere would return from his hiatus. It was December 9th, and Robinhood was trading at $11.73 a share. He thought this was a good buy, so he loaded up on shares and hoped for the best. LongWashere didn't really have a good feeling about Robinhood after seeing Bitcoin drop, so he offloaded his shares. Monday morning came along and he was feeling locked and loaded. With 2,100 TQQQ calls and 1,000 Robinhood calls, he had about 300K on the line. These calls all expired at the end of the week, but of course, being the Dragon of Wall Street, he would not have to wait a week. TQQQ and Robinhood both had a decent day, and LongWashere locked in an $80,000 gain. He got out of his position, but he was already ready for the next trade. Now that I proved that I'm not a back to the original programming of Hood shares. At this point, I'm just doing it for the lols. On the same day of getting out of his calls, he dumped 1.2 mil into Robinhood shares. He was getting ready for CPI, and after being pretty unimpressed, he decided to sell covered calls on his shares. He got 0 day till expiration QQQ debit spreads, and he got his hands on a $7,000 gain with Robinhood and a $14,000 gain with QQQ. The day after this, he would bet 100K on QQQ before the Federal Open Market Committee. Only a few hours later, he would walk away with a $30,000 profit. Right after locking in this profit, he spent another 130K on weekly TQQQ calls. TQQQ went up and LongWashere would profit more than 40K. Only 3 days later, he threw 1.6 mil into Palantir because the CEO's head looks like his grandpa's ball. If you're someone who is sick and tired of the diciness of the stock market, then look no further, because Kalshi, the sponsor of today's video, is the first legal platform in the US where people can trade on events in all 50 states. When doing due diligence on a company, investing in calls or puts is always a bit of a shot in the dark. Even if the company reports phenomenal earnings, poor guidance, wacky IV, or theta can completely soil your position. Kalshi gets rid of this problem because you can make trades on specific events that are gonna happen within companies. Instead of getting calls or puts on Tesla before they announce deliveries, hoping that everything lines up, you can instead get contracts specifically based on their quarterly delivery amount. On top of this, the first 500 people who sign up using my link in the description will get a free $20 credit. So why not sign up and see what you can do with your bonus? Haven't lost in so long, I'm forgetting how it feels. Will this end my streak? Sold my last hood position for 30K before the drop. The dragon escapes again. Unfortunately, this trade would end his streak, but not by too much. He sold his position at a 50K loss and got 30K in covered call premiums. Overall, a 20K loss on a $1.6 million trade isn't that bad. 2 days after this, LongWashere was still hungry for more. That led him to dropping 78K on QQQ debit spreads that were just barely in the money. Luckily for him, QQQ's momentum kept the share price up, and he was able to get his hands on a $38,000 gain. Only 1 day after this, another user would post, "My entire net worth betting against Meta." LongWashere took this one personally. He fired back by betting double his net worth on calls to inverse him. Meta kept on pushing, and the Dragon of Wall Street walked away with a $35,000 gain. Unfortunately for the other user, he was down over 30%. 3 days later, he made another 64K on Coinbase debit spreads. Only 5 days later, coincidentally enough, he made another 64K profit on Coinbase, this time with straight calls instead of spreads. Later that day, he dropped a $250,000 on USO calls. Unfortunately, things didn't really go his way, and he would close out his position for a 50K loss. 2 weeks later, he hit us with, "Went from up 30K to losing it all because I decided to play Monster Hunter for 10 minutes instead of selling yesterday at open." LongWashere took a $50,000 loss because he was too dialed in on the Monster Hunter grind. 5 days later, he got a 16K gain with USO, and 8 days after that, he got an $8,000 gain with PayPal put spreads. All of this was nothing compared to the trade he was getting ready to make. LongWashere YOLO'd 500K on Amazon calls that expired in only a few days. Amazon was trading at about $156 a share, so his calls were at least slightly in the money. The Dragon of Wall Street even made the claim that he would buy a pizza party for Amazon employees if the stock hit $160 before the end of the week. Amazon was a bit up and down, but by the end of the day on Thursday, the stock was trading at about $158. He sold 400 of his calls for a $40,000 profit and had an unrealized profit of $122K in his calls that had the strike price of $152. This was great, but Amazon had to jump $2 in a day for him to bless everyone with a pizza party. Lo and behold, Amazon hit the magic number on Friday. LongWashere closed out the rest of his calls for $750K and made a total profit of $490,000. The Dragon of Wall Street said ordering couple grand worth of pizza to Amazon Lab 126 on Wednesday in Sunnyvale. If you know some that know someone that works there, let them know. It was January 31st, and in a now deleted post, LongWashere showed some of the pizza that he dropped off to Amazon. LongWashere was doing better than ever, but this extra attention would end up getting him the ban hammer. No advertising / self-promo. Please review the rules. And soon after that, the Dragon of Wall Street would be banned from the subreddit. He was banned for having his Patreon in his bio, but many users would say that this ban was pretty unfair. According to him, mods asked if he was a millionaire, then why did he need a Patreon? Which implied that they thought he was faking his posts. This is a valid question, but at the end of the day, why not make extra money on something that you're already doing anyway? Comment whether or not you think there's any substance to the mod's suspicions. Even though he got banned from WallStreetBets, he wasn't ready to give up. He started his own subreddit, Wall Street Dragons, which currently has over 400 members. He regularly posts million-dollar trades that he makes in his Robinhood portfolio. LongWashere is a man who 9 years ago was broke and hungry looking for free food. I know we like to joke around with risky options trades, but he was able to turn his life around with hard work at his job and good old due diligence. Making this much money with options is a rare occurrence, but you can make good gains for yourself if you work hard and let it grow in an index fund. If you want to support LongWashere, you can join his Patreon or tune into the Wall Street Dragons subreddit. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on his journey.